Tomorrow has never challenged you. It agrees, quietly, offering delay without conflict. It sounds reasonable, responsible, even intelligent. That is why it works. Tomorrow is the most effective way to step away from responsibility without admitting retreat. Nothing breaks when tomorrow is chosen. There is no alarm, no immediate consequence. Pressure softens. Obligation fades slightly. That relief is the trap activating. In that moment, authority shifts from decision to delay, and it happens without notice. The danger is not the postponed task. The danger is the lesson postponement teaches. Each delay trains the mind to believe execution is optional. Optional execution weakens command. Weak command produces hesitation. Hesitation repeated reshapes behavior. Behavior reshapes identity quietly. Tomorrow survives because it uses the language of judgment. It claims patience, timing, and strategy. Delay stops feeling like avoidance and starts feeling like wisdom. The mind accepts this explanation easily because it protects self-image. That is how the trap hides. Waiting does not reduce resistance. It concentrates it. The longer action is postponed, the heavier starting becomes. Memory records every delay and uses it as evidence. Evidence builds doubt. Doubt increases friction. Friction makes action feel unnecessary now and urgent later. The true cost is not time. Time continues regardless. The cost is internal credibility. When decisions are not followed by action, the mind stops trusting its own commands. Promises weaken. Authority erodes. Intention loses meaning. Tomorrow preserves potential without ever allowing it to be tested. Untested potential feels safe. It also guarantees stagnation. Comfort remains. Progress disappears. This is not about motivation or inspiration. It is about removing tomorrow from its position of control. Awareness alone will not break this pattern. Only action taken while resistance exists will. If this feels precise, that matters. If the urge to delay appears even now, that is the trap revealing itself. If you are the person this book is speaking to, then let the transformation journey begin. Chapter 1. Tomorrow is the lie that feels safe. Tomorrow survives because it removes pressure from today. And pressure is the enemy of avoidance. Pressure forces decision. Decision forces exposure. Exposure threatens comfort. The mind protects comfort by inventing time. Tomorrow is not a future moment. Tomorrow is a psychological shelter designed to delay action without admitting fear. Every postponed task reinforces the belief that immediate effort is optional. Optional effort weakens authority. Weak authority produces hesitation. Hesitation feels reasonable, yet it quietly trains inaction as a valid response to resistance. Over time, this response becomes automatic. Automatic hesitation reshapes character. Safety offered by tomorrow is counterfeit. Real safety is created through capability. Capability only develops through repeated use under discomfort. Waiting weakens capacity. Weak capacity increases fear. Fear strengthens attachment to tomorrow. The loop tightens silently. The lie of tomorrow convinces you that more time will reduce resistance. Time does nothing without action. Resistance fades only when confronted. Avoidance magnifies it. Each delay increases the perceived difficulty of starting. Starting later never becomes easier. It becomes heavier. Breaking the lie requires contradiction, not reflection. Action taken immediately removes tomorrow's authority. Authority collapses when it is disobeyed. One act does not solve everything, but it alters direction. Direction determines outcome more reliably than intensity. Tomorrow will continue offering comfort. Comfort must be denied repeatedly. Repeated denial restores internal leadership. Leadership rebuilds trust with self. Trust restores momentum. Momentum renders tomorrow irrelevant. Chapter 2. Weakness still owes action. Weakness has been misinterpreted as permission when it is actually a condition requiring stricter structure. Feeling depleted does not erase responsibility. It sharpens the need for systems that function without emotional cooperation. When weakness is allowed to negotiate, it gradually assumes authority over behavior. Authority misplaced in weakness always leads toward delay. Delay feels protective when energy is low, yet protection without movement becomes decay. Weakness argues convincingly because it speaks in the language of realism and self-preservation. That language feels reasonable, which makes it dangerous. Each time weakness is obeyed, it gains credibility. Credibility becomes expectation. Expectation becomes habit. Habit solidifies identity. Identity formed under surrender resists change aggressively. This is how temporary fatigue becomes permanent limitation. Action taken while weak builds a form of confidence that emotion cannot manufacture. That confidence is rooted in proof rather than belief. Proof reshapes self-perception permanently. Waiting for strength teaches the mind that strength controls behavior. Acting while weak teaches the mind that command controls behavior. Rest has value, but rest without action preserves weakness by avoiding challenge. Challenge forces adaptation. Adaptation builds strength. Strength earned under discomfort lasts longer than strength borrowed from motivation. Weakness acknowledged without obedience loses authority. Responsibility does not pause for emotional states. Life continues demanding engagement regardless of readiness. Acting while weak aligns behavior with reality instead of fantasy. Reality rewards engagement. Fantasy rewards delay. Weakness still owes action because obligation never negotiates. Chapter 3. Comfort is quietly controlling you. Comfort rarely announces control because it governs through permission rather than force. It suggests ease, rest, and relief while quietly deciding what will not be done. Each allowance feels harmless. Accumulated allowances become a lifestyle governed by avoidance. The nervous system adapts quickly to ease. When ease dominates, effort begins to feel abnormal and threatening. Threat perception increases resistance. Resistance justifies further comfort. Comfort reframes discipline as punishment and discomfort as danger. Comfort steals urgency. Without urgency, focus dissolves. Dissolved focus produces distraction. Distraction weakens execution. Weak execution reinforces the belief that effort is ineffective. Comfort thrives inside that belief. Deliberate discomfort is the antidote. Discomfort, applied intentionally, restores sensitivity to effort. Effort rebuilds confidence through exposure. Exposure reduces fear. Fear fuels avoidance. Comfort depends on avoidance to survive. Comfort must be challenged daily, or it expands automatically. Expansion is silent but relentless. Discipline contracts comfort by enforcing action. Action restores leadership internally. Leadership removes comfort from authority. Chapter 4. Delay rewrites identity. Identity is not declared through intention. It is demonstrated through behavior. Delay demonstrates hesitation. Hesitation repeated becomes expectation. Expectation reshapes self-image. Self-image adjusts downward to reduce internal conflict. Each unkept promise teaches the mind that commitments are optional. Optional commitments weaken authority. Weak authority reduces effort. Reduced effort confirms diminished identity. Identity settles where behavior repeatedly lands. Delay preserves identity, even when identity is failing. Action threatens it. Threat feels dangerous because change demands effort. Effort restores authority. Authority rebuilds integrity. Immediate action disrupts identity erosion. Disruption creates discomfort. Discomfort forces awareness. Awareness enables correction. Correction changes trajectory. Identity changes fastest when behavior changes under resistance. Resistance reveals truth. Truth reshapes self-concept permanently. Chapter 5. Discipline replaces motivation. Motivation fluctuates because it depends on emotion, energy, and circumstance. Discipline operates independently of all three. Reliance on motivation hands authority to unstable internal states. Discipline removes authority from feeling and places it into structure. Structure simplifies execution by removing choice. Choice creates hesitation. Hesitation drains energy. Discipline conserves energy by eliminating debate. When action becomes scheduled and enforced, motivation becomes irrelevant. Consistency builds trust internally. Trust stabilizes confidence. Stable confidence reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety improves execution. Discipline quietly repairs multiple systems simultaneously. Waiting for motivation teaches the mind to delay until comfort aligns with desire. Discipline teaches the mind to act regardless of alignment. That lesson builds resilience. Resilience preserves progress under pressure. Discipline does not demand enthusiasm. It demands execution. Execution produces results. Results reinforce discipline. Discipline replaces motivation permanently. Chapter 6. Tomorrow is a silent agreement with failure. Tomorrow survives because it feels neutral, and neutrality feels safe when pressure begins to close in. It does not sound like quitting, and it never announces retreat openly. It presents itself as strategy, patience, or intelligence, which makes it difficult to challenge internally. The mind prefers explanations that protect self-image, and tomorrow offers that protection effortlessly. By choosing tomorrow, discomfort is postponed without admitting fear, and responsibility is delayed without feeling irresponsible. This is why tomorrow becomes a silent agreement rather than a dramatic decision. Every time tomorrow is chosen, an internal contract is reinforced that effort can be postponed without immediate consequence. The absence of immediate consequence is mistaken for absence of cost. Cost accumulates quietly. Momentum drains invisibly. Urgency fades gradually. None of this feels dangerous in the moment, which is exactly why it is effective. Failure does not begin with collapse. It begins with neutral delays that feel reasonable. Tomorrow delays pain, but it also delays adaptation. Adaptation only occurs when resistance is confronted directly. Resistance avoided does not disappear, it amplifies. The mind learns quickly from avoidance. It learns that discomfort should be escaped and that relief should be prioritized. Once that lesson is absorbed, discipline begins to feel unnatural, even intrusive. Action feels like a threat rather than a tool. This shift in perception happens slowly, but once established, it controls behavior decisively. Readiness is often used as justification for delay, yet readiness never precedes action. Action creates readiness through exposure. Exposure builds tolerance. Tolerance builds confidence. Tomorrow reverses this sequence and waits for confidence before effort begins. Confidence never appears under those conditions. Confidence is earned only through repeated engagement under strain. Waiting trains the nervous system to fear effort rather than adapt to it. Each postponed task increases the psychological weight of starting. The mind remembers avoidance. Memory magnifies difficulty. What once required minimal effort now feels overwhelming. The task did not change. Identity shifted subtly toward hesitation. Tomorrow accelerates that shift by validating delay repeatedly. Over time, hesitation becomes the default response to resistance. Breaking the agreement with tomorrow requires immediate execution, not preparation or analysis. Execution interrupts the internal narrative. Interruption feels uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of control tomorrow provides. That discomfort is not danger. It is evidence that authority is being reclaimed. Authority always feels uncomfortable when it returns after neglect. Tomorrow loses power only when it is consistently disobeyed. One refusal weakens it. Repeated refusal collapses it. Authority returns when action becomes non-negotiable, regardless of mood, energy, or confidence. Failure is not dramatic. It is the result of silent agreements honored repeatedly. Progress begins the moment those agreements are broken. Chapter 7. Discipline is built in silence. Discipline grows strongest where there is no audience, no commentary, and no demand for recognition. Silence removes performance pressure, and without performance, effort becomes cleaner and more direct. When actions are performed quietly, they are driven by commitment rather than approval. Approval seeking weakens discipline because it ties behavior to external reaction. Silence cuts that dependency completely. When discipline is practiced without announcement, it becomes harder to abandon. There is no identity to protect publicly and no image to maintain. The only relationship involved is the one between decision and execution. That relationship strengthens with repetition. Repetition builds rhythm. Rhythm sustains action, even when emotion withdraws cooperation. Silence also prevents negotiation. When intentions are spoken aloud, they invite internal debate and external interference. Debate slows action. Interference introduces doubt. Doubt weakens resolve. Silence eliminates these threats by keeping effort contained and focused. What remains is execution without distraction. Quiet effort retrains the nervous system. When work is done without stimulation or validation, the system adapts to effort as a normal condition. Normalized effort reduces resistance. Reduced resistance increases efficiency. Efficiency builds confidence without excitement. That confidence is stable because it is not dependent on praise. Loud effort seeks energy from attention. Silent effort generates energy from completion. Completion compounds progress invisibly. Invisible progress strengthens identity internally rather than socially. Identity formed in silence does not collapse when attention disappears. Discipline built in silence also sharpens awareness. Without noise, small corrections become noticeable. Small corrections prevent large failures. This creates precision. Precision improves outcome quality. Quality reinforces trust with self. Silence protects discipline during difficulty. When struggle is not announced, it cannot be exaggerated. When difficulty is not dramatized, it is easier to endure. Endurance strengthens resilience. Resilience stabilizes progress under pressure. There is power in being unknown while improving. Unknown effort removes comparison. Comparison distorts focus. Focus preserved strengthens execution. Execution reinforces discipline. Silence does not mean isolation. It means containment. Contained effort compounds faster because energy is not leaked through explanation or justification. Every completed action strengthens internal authority. Discipline built this way becomes identity rather than behavior. Identity does not require motivation. Identity expresses itself automatically. When discipline becomes identity, action occurs without negotiation. Silence is not weakness. It is control. Control maintained quietly lasts longer than control displayed loudly. This is how discipline becomes permanent. Chapter 8. Feelings are not commands. Feelings fluctuate constantly, shifting with sleep, nutrition, stress, memory, and circumstance. Treating them as commands creates instability because instability becomes the governing force of behavior. When action depends on feeling, progress becomes inconsistent. Inconsistency erodes trust internally. Without trust, self-leadership collapses. Feelings are reactive. They respond to environment and interpretation. Decisions must be deliberate. Deliberate action creates direction. Direction stabilizes movement. When direction is surrendered to feeling, behavior becomes reactive rather than intentional. Reactive behavior follows comfort. Intentional behavior follows command. Waiting to feel ready hands authority to volatility. Volatility cannot build anything durable. Acting regardless of feeling builds stability. Stability reduces emotional intensity. Reduced intensity sharpens focus. Focus improves execution. Execution produces results that gradually recalibrate emotion. The nervous system learns through repetition. When action is taken despite emotional resistance, tolerance develops. Tolerance reduces avoidance. Reduced avoidance weakens fear. Fear is the primary force behind emotional disobedience. Discipline dismantles fear by proving it survivable. Feelings often argue convincingly. They present logic, justification, and timing. They suggest rest, delay, or escape. These suggestions feel protective, yet they are incomplete. They ignore long-term cost. Long-term cost accumulates regardless of emotional relief. Allowing feelings to command behavior teaches the mind that discomfort is dangerous. This lesson creates fragility. Fragility demands protection. Protection reduces exposure. Reduced exposure halts growth. Growth only occurs under stress. Decision-based action teaches a different lesson. It teaches that discomfort is tolerable. Tolerable discomfort loses power. Power lost returns to discipline. Discipline stabilizes progress even when emotion withdraws cooperation. Feelings can inform awareness. They can signal fatigue or overload. They must never direct behavior. Direction belongs to commitment. Commitment outlasts emotion. Progress requires obedience to decisions made under clarity, not submission to feelings experienced under pressure. Pressure distorts perception. Discipline restores it. This is not suppression. It is hierarchy. Feelings exist, but they do not lead. Leadership belongs to discipline. Discipline ensures continuity when feelings fluctuate. Chapter 9. Identity is shaped by what you do. Tired. Fatigue removes performance and exposes truth. When energy fades, the mind loses its ability to pretend, justify, or posture. What remains is default behavior. Default behavior reveals identity more accurately than ambition, intention, or self-description ever could. Identity is not formed in moments of excitement. It is forged when strength is unavailable and effort feels unrewarded. When tired, the nervous system seeks relief. Relief promises comfort. Comfort tempts avoidance. Avoidance feels logical when resources feel depleted. Yet, this is precisely where identity is shaped most decisively. Choosing action while tired proves authority. Choosing avoidance while tired proves dependence. Dependence repeated becomes expectation. Expectation solidifies character. Many believe effort should stop when energy disappears. This belief trains fragility. Fragility demands protection. Protection reduces exposure. Reduced exposure halts growth. Growth never occurs in protection. Growth demands engagement under strain. Fatigue is strain. Strain is opportunity. Action taken while tired does not require intensity. It requires obedience. Obedience preserves momentum. Momentum reduces resistance. Resistance fades when behavior continues regardless of internal protest. This is how discipline becomes automatic rather than forced. Effort under fatigue builds credibility with self. Credibility stabilizes self-image. Stable self-image resists collapse under stress. When the mind knows action occurs even when energy is gone, anxiety decreases. There is no need to panic about mood or motivation. Control has been established. Avoidance under fatigue teaches the opposite lesson. It teaches that conditions must be favorable for effort to occur. Favorable conditions are rare and unreliable. Waiting for them creates inconsistency. Inconsistency erodes confidence. Confidence lost through inconsistency is difficult to rebuild. Fatigue reveals whether discipline is conditional or absolute. Conditional discipline collapses under pressure. Absolute discipline adapts and continues. Adaptation strengthens resilience. Resilience stabilizes progress. Identity formed under exhaustion endures because it is not dependent on feeling. Identity formed under comfort fractures when conditions change. Comfort-based identity cannot survive adversity. Every tired decision is a vote for the person you are becoming. Those votes accumulate quietly. Over time, identity becomes inevitable. Fatigue accelerates this process by removing illusion. Do not wait to feel strong to act. Act to prove strength exists beyond feeling. This proof is permanent. Identity built here does not retreat. Chapter 10. Delay trains. Disobedience. Delay does not simply postpone action. It actively trains the mind to ignore its own commands. Every decision made and not executed teaches the nervous system that instruction does not require obedience. Obedience weakened once becomes obedience questioned. Obedience questioned repeatedly becomes optional behavior. Optional behavior erodes authority from the inside. Self-leadership depends on alignment between decision and action. When that alignment breaks, credibility collapses internally. The mind remembers every broken instruction. Memory accumulates evidence. Evidence reshapes expectation. Expectation lowers standards. Lower standards reduce effort. Reduced effort confirms diminished authority. Delay feels harmless because it avoids confrontation. Confrontation exposes limits. Exposure threatens comfort. Delay offers relief without resolution. Relief becomes addictive. Addiction to relief creates avoidance patterns that dominate behavior quietly. This is how disobedience becomes normal. Each postponed task trains hesitation as a response to resistance. Hesitation feels intelligent because it sounds measured. Measured delay feels responsible. Yet responsibility without execution is illusion. Illusion cannot produce progress. Progress requires obedience to decision, regardless of resistance. Internal authority functions like muscle. Used regularly, it strengthens. Neglected through delay, it atrophies. Atrophied authority struggles under pressure. Pressure reveals weakness. Weak authority invites further delay. The cycle reinforces itself. Immediate execution interrupts disobedience training. When action follows decision quickly, authority is reinforced. Reinforced authority stabilizes behavior across emotional states. Stability reduces anxiety. Anxiety diminishes when outcomes feel controlled. Delay teaches the mind that time will solve resistance. Time solves nothing without action. Resistance fades only through exposure. Exposure demands execution. Execution restores command. When commands are delayed repeatedly, the mind stops taking future commands seriously. This is insubordination at the psychological level. Insubordination destroys self-trust. Without self-trust, discipline collapses. Reclaiming authority requires ruthless follow-through. Decisions must be executed promptly, even imperfectly. Imperfect execution strengthens authority more than perfect intention ever could. Authority respects action, not planning. Disobedience, trained through delay, cannot be corrected through motivation. Motivation excites briefly, but does not enforce. Enforcement belongs to discipline. Discipline restores hierarchy internally. Every moment of delay is instruction. It teaches the mind either obedience or disregard. Choose carefully. Authority is built or dismantled with each decision. Action reestablishes command. Command restores discipline. Discipline secures identity. Identity determines destiny. Chapter 11. Consistency is stronger than intensity. Intensity arrives loudly and leaves without warning. It feels powerful because it floods the system with urgency, emotion, and imagined momentum. That surge creates the illusion of progress, even when nothing sustainable has been established. Consistency operates differently. It is quiet, repetitive, and unremarkable. It does not seek permission from emotion, and it does not collapse when enthusiasm disappears. Progress that survives pressure is built only through consistency. Intensity depends on conditions. It requires the right mood, the right energy, or the right circumstances to appear. When those conditions fade, intensity retreats. Consistency does not negotiate with conditions. It functions regardless of internal weather. This is why consistency outlasts talent, excitement, and motivation combined. The nervous system adapts to repetition, not surges. Repetition teaches safety. Safety reduces resistance. Reduced resistance makes action easier to repeat. This loop compounds silently. Intensity interrupts this loop by being irregular. Irregular effort confuses adaptation. Confused adaptation produces instability. Many mistake exhaustion for failure when intensity fades. In reality, exhaustion simply removes excess emotion and exposes whether consistency exists underneath. If behavior collapses when intensity disappears, discipline was never present. What existed was emotional momentum, not structure. Consistency does not feel heroic. It feels mundane. Mundane effort lacks drama, which is why the ego resists it. The ego prefers peaks and collapses because they preserve identity without demanding transformation. Consistency forces transformation slowly, without applause, and without narrative. Small actions repeated daily outperform large actions performed sporadically. The mind respects evidence more than intention. Evidence accumulates through consistency. Accumulated evidence rebuilds self-trust. Self-trust stabilizes confidence. Stable confidence sustains effort without emotional reinforcement. Consistency also eliminates decision fatigue. When behavior is scheduled and enforced, there is no debate. Debate drains energy. Energy conserved through consistency is redirected toward execution. Execution repeated becomes automatic. Automatic behavior defines character. Intensity seeks fast results to justify effort. When results do not arrive quickly, discouragement follows. Discouragement feeds delay. Delay dismantles momentum. Consistency bypasses this cycle by removing expectation of immediate reward. It trusts accumulation. Accumulation always wins, even when unnoticed. Consistency does not require belief. It requires compliance. Compliance repeated becomes identity. Identity expressed daily reshapes destiny quietly and permanently. Intensity impresses briefly. Consistency transforms completely. Chapter 12. Discipline continues without emotion. Emotion is unreliable by nature. It rises and falls based on factors outside conscious control. When discipline depends on emotion, progress becomes fragile. Fragile systems collapse under stress. Discipline that continues without emotion survives adversity because it does not require cooperation from feeling. Many believe emotion must be aligned before action can occur. This belief creates dependency. Dependency transfers authority away from discipline and into volatility. Volatility cannot sustain progress. It reacts rather than directs. Action taken without emotional support retrains the nervous system. It teaches that discomfort is survivable and temporary. This lesson weakens fear. Fear weakened loses influence. Influence returned strengthens discipline. Emotion often argues for delay using reasonable language. It frames hesitation as self-care, patience, or strategy. These arguments feel convincing because they reduce immediate discomfort. They ignore long-term cost. Discipline considers cost across time, not just in the moment. Continuing without emotion builds resilience. Resilience stabilizes effort when conditions deteriorate. Stable effort preserves momentum. Momentum simplifies future action. This is how discipline compounds quietly. Removing emotion from leadership does not eliminate feeling. It establishes hierarchy. Feeling exists, but it does not command. Command belongs to commitment. Commitment endures when emotion withdraws. Progress sustained through emotional neutrality is stronger because it is not dependent on internal agreement. It functions through structure, not desire. Structure does not argue. It executes. When discipline operates without emotion, identity stabilizes. There is no need to negotiate self-worth based on mood. Action becomes predictable. Predictability builds trust internally. Emotion may follow later, recalibrated by results. Results earned through discipline reshape emotional response permanently. This sequence is reliable. The reverse is not. Discipline that requires feeling is fragile. Discipline that functions without it is unbreakable. Chapter 13. Self-control is quiet authority. Authority does not announce itself. It is recognized through consistency and follow-through. Self-control operates the same way. It does not rely on force or intensity. It relies on calm enforcement of decisions regardless of circumstance. When authority is loud, it is often compensating for weakness. Quiet authority does not need explanation. It functions through expectation and consistency. Behavior aligns because command is trusted internally. Self-control strengthens when decisions are executed without delay. Each completed action reinforces internal hierarchy. Hierarchy reduces chaos. Reduced chaos preserves focus. Focus improves precision. Lack of self-control is rarely dramatic. It appears as small allowances repeated daily. Each allowance weakens authority slightly. Over time, authority erodes enough that commands are ignored without resistance. This is how discipline collapses quietly. Rebuilding self-control requires strict follow-through. Decisions must be honored even when inconvenient. Inconvenience is not danger. It is training. Training strengthens authority. Quiet authority reduces anxiety. When behavior is predictable, the mind feels secure. Security improves performance. Performance reinforces confidence without excitement. Self-control also conserves energy. There is no need for internal argument when hierarchy is clear. Energy saved is directed into execution. Authority maintained quietly lasts longer because it is not dependent on image or validation. It is internal, stable, and resilient. Self-control expressed daily becomes identity. Identity governs behavior automatically. Chapter 14. Action shrinks fear. Fear grows in avoidance. Avoidance feeds imagination. Imagination exaggerates threat. Exaggerated threat paralyzes behavior. This cycle repeats until fear feels overwhelming. Action interrupts this cycle immediately. When action is taken, fear loses its narrative. Reality replaces imagination. Reality is rarely as severe as imagined resistance suggested. Exposure reduces fear because it replaces uncertainty with experience. Fear avoided becomes more convincing. Fear confronted becomes manageable. This is not theory. It is nervous system adaptation through exposure. Small actions are sufficient to shrink fear. Large actions are unnecessary. Consistent exposure matters more than intensity. Each exposure teaches tolerance. Tolerance reduces sensitivity. Reduced sensitivity weakens fear's influence. Waiting for fear to disappear before acting ensures paralysis. Fear dissipates only after action begins. This order cannot be reversed. Action taken despite fear builds confidence grounded in evidence. Evidence reshapes self-perception. Self-perception aligned with capability stabilizes behavior. Fear does not need to be eliminated. It needs to be outranked. Discipline outranks fear when action is enforced regardless of emotional protest. Repeated action under fear transforms fear into background noise. Background noise no longer dictates behavior. Fear shrinks when ignored through execution. Authority grows when action continues. Chapter 15. Identity locks through repetition. Identity is not chosen. It is accumulated. Every repeated behavior casts a vote. Votes accumulate quietly until identity becomes unavoidable. This process does not respond to intention. It responds to repetition. When action is repeated under resistance, identity strengthens. When avoidance is repeated, identity weakens. There is no neutral outcome. Every repetition moves identity in one direction. Repetition removes effort over time. What once required discipline becomes default. Default behavior defines character. Character directs destiny. Identity locked through repetition is stable. It does not fracture under pressure because it is not dependent on feeling or circumstance. It expresses itself automatically. Temporary effort produces temporary change. Repetition produces permanence. Permanence reshapes life quietly. Identity does not require belief. It requires evidence. Evidence is built through repetition. The person you become is the sum of repeated actions, not declared intentions. This truth is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It is also empowering because it places control back into behavior. Repetition locks identity. Identity directs outcomes. Outcomes compound. The trap of tomorrow collapses when repetition replaces delay. Chapter 16. Standards decide your future. Standards are the invisible rules that govern behavior when no one is watching. They determine what is tolerated, what is repeated, and what is rejected immediately. Motivation may fluctuate and discipline may strain, but standards remain fixed once established. A low standard invites negotiation. A high standard eliminates it. Every outcome is downstream from a standard. When standards are unclear, behavior becomes reactive. Reaction follows comfort. Comfort preserves weakness. Weakness compounds quietly. When standards are clear, behavior becomes predictable. Predictable behavior produces stable outcomes. Stability builds confidence rooted in structure rather than emotion. Raising standards feels uncomfortable because it removes familiar escape routes. Excuses lose credibility. Delay loses legitimacy. The mind resists this shift because it threatens patterns that once provided relief. Relief without progress is expensive. Standards expose that cost. A standard is not a goal. Goals are aspirational and flexible. Standards are enforced regardless of mood or circumstance. Enforcement builds authority. Authority stabilizes self-leadership. Self-leadership removes reliance on external pressure. When standards are low, effort feels optional. Optional effort erodes discipline. Discipline weakened collapses under stress. Stress is unavoidable. Standards protect behavior when stress arrives. High standards simplify decisions. There is no debate when behavior violates a standard. Correction happens immediately. Immediate correction prevents drift. Drift destroys progress silently. Standards must be lived daily to remain effective. Inconsistent enforcement teaches the mind that rules are flexible. Flexible rules invite negotiation. Negotiation restores delay. The future is decided quietly through standards upheld or abandoned daily. Destiny is not dramatic. It is enforced through repetition. Chapter 17. Relapse begins with permission. Relapse does not begin with failure. It begins with permission. Permission to rest longer. Permission to skip once. Permission to delay without consequence. Each permission feels reasonable. Reasonableness is how regression disguises itself. The first permission is always the most dangerous because it establishes precedent. Precedent becomes justification. Justification lowers resistance. Lower resistance accelerates decline. Discipline does not collapse suddenly. It erodes through allowances that feel compassionate. Compassion without structure becomes indulgence. Indulgence weakens authority. Weak authority cannot enforce recovery. Preventing relapse requires vigilance at the permission stage. When permission is denied early, correction is simple. When permission is allowed repeatedly, correction becomes painful. Relapse psychology depends on selective memory. It remembers relief, but forgets consequence. Discipline remembers consequence. That memory protects progress. Standards must be enforced, especially when deviation feels harmless. Harmless deviation compounds fastest because it avoids scrutiny. Authority preserved through strict standards prevents relapse before it manifests. Recovery is easier than repair. Chapter 18. Discipline must become automatic. Effort that requires constant willpower is unsustainable. Willpower depletes. Automation preserves energy. Discipline must transition from effort to default behavior. Automation is built through repetition under consistent rules. Consistency removes decision-making. When behavior is automatic, resistance decreases dramatically. Automatic discipline does not feel intense. It feels neutral. Neutral effort is reliable. Reliability sustains progress. When discipline is automatic, setbacks lose power. Recovery happens quickly because behavior resumes without negotiation. Automation requires patience. Early repetition feels forced. Forced repetition becomes familiar. Familiarity becomes normal. Normal behavior defines identity. The goal is not to feel disciplined. The goal is to behave predictably under all conditions. Automatic discipline is freedom. Freedom from debate. Freedom from mood dependence. Freedom from delay. Chapter 19. Authority is claimed daily. Authority is not granted permanently. It is claimed daily through follow-through. Each day presents an opportunity to reinforce or weaken command. Ignoring decisions weakens authority. Executing decisions strengthens it. Authority responds only to action. Daily authority simplifies life. Complexity dissolves when hierarchy is clear. Clarity improves execution. When authority is maintained, confidence stabilizes. Stability reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety improves performance. Authority must be reclaimed immediately after lapses. Delay magnifies damage. Immediate correction restores order. Leadership over self is the foundation of all progress. Without it, effort fragments. Authority claimed daily becomes unquestioned internally. Chapter 20. Tomorrow no longer exists. Tomorrow loses meaning when action becomes default. Delay has no leverage where discipline operates automatically. The future is no longer imagined. It is constructed daily through behavior. Responsibility is no longer debated. It is executed. Weakness may appear. Fatigue may persist. Emotion may fluctuate. Action continues. This is not motivation. It is command. Standards are enforced. Discipline is automatic. Authority is intact. Tomorrow has been removed from decision-making. Only action remains. Chapter 21. Responsibility has no mood. Responsibility does not adjust itself based on energy, confidence, or emotional state. It exists independently of internal conditions. When responsibility is allowed to wait for the right feeling, it is no longer responsibility. It becomes preference. Preference obeys comfort. Responsibility does not. Many believe responsibility should feel aligned, meaningful, or motivating before it is acted upon. This belief weakens execution. Responsibility is structural. It functions whether alignment exists or not. When action is delayed for emotional readiness, authority is surrendered to volatility. Responsibility enforced without mood builds stability. Stability reduces internal chaos. Reduced chaos preserves focus. Focus improves execution. Execution strengthens trust with self. Mood-based action creates inconsistency. Inconsistency erodes credibility internally. Without credibility, self-command collapses. Responsibility upheld, regardless of mood, restores that credibility. There will be days when energy is absent and confidence is low. Responsibility remains unchanged. Acting anyway reinforces identity rooted in command rather than feeling. Responsibility is not punishment. It is structure. Structure protects progress when emotion fluctuates. When responsibility has no mood, delay loses justification. Action becomes expected. Chapter 22. Discipline survives boredom. Boredom is one of the most underestimated threats to progress. It lacks intensity, drama, and urgency, which allows it to operate unnoticed. While fear triggers resistance openly, boredom dissolves discipline quietly by making effort feel pointless. Discipline that relies on excitement collapses under boredom. Discipline that relies on structure continues unaffected. Structure does not require stimulation. It requires execution. Boredom tempts novelty. Novelty disrupts consistency. Disrupted consistency resets progress. Progress lost through boredom feels harmless, yet the cost accumulates rapidly. Continuing through boredom retrains the nervous system to tolerate repetition. Tolerance strengthens consistency. Consistency compounds progress invisibly. Boredom exposes whether discipline is internalized or performative. Performative effort seeks stimulation. Internalized discipline functions without it. Repetition without reward builds endurance. Endurance stabilizes identity. Identity formed here does not fracture when excitement fades. Discipline survives boredom because it does not depend on interest. It depends on standards. Chapter 23. No one is coming to save you. Waiting for rescue is another form of tomorrow. It disguises passivity as hope. Hope without action preserves stagnation. External rescue weakens internal authority. When responsibility is outsourced, self-command erodes. Erosion invites dependence. Dependence collapses resilience. Accepting that no one is coming restores urgency. Urgency clarifies priority. Priority sharpens focus. Focus drives execution. This acceptance is not pessimism. It is ownership. Ownership returns power to behavior. When rescue is removed as an option, action becomes necessary. Necessity cuts through hesitation. Self-reliance enforced daily builds confidence grounded in evidence. Evidence replaces belief. Progress accelerates when responsibility is fully internalized. Chapter 24. The cost of avoidance is always paid. Avoidance delays discomfort but never eliminates cost. Cost accumulates silently and is paid later with interest. Interest appears as anxiety, regret, diminished confidence, and narrowed opportunity. Avoidance feels lighter in the moment. That lightness is deceptive. Weight returns compounded. Every avoided action increases future resistance. Resistance magnified becomes paralysis. Facing discomfort early keeps cost manageable. Delaying it increases burden. Avoidance teaches the mind that escape is preferable to engagement. Engagement teaches adaptability. Adaptability builds strength. Cost paid gradually through action is smaller than cost paid later through regret. There is no free delay. Payment is inevitable. Chapter 25. Act without negotiation. Negotiation is the final refuge of delay. It sounds reasonable and intelligent, yet it exists only to postpone execution. When negotiation ends, clarity begins. Clarity removes friction. Frictionless action preserves momentum. Acting without negotiation does not require confidence. It requires decision honored immediately. Hesitation weakens command. Immediate execution strengthens it. There will always be reasons to wait. Reasons multiply endlessly. Action ends the discussion. This is where identity is sealed. Action occurs regardless of weakness, boredom, fear, or mood. Responsibility is enforced. Discipline is automatic. Authority is intact. Act